Okay, great. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 47th Annual SciFi Festival in Boston, Massachusetts. This is the Comedy in Sci-Fi panel. I'm Michelle Barbera, I'll be your host, and I'm joined today by three filmmakers and one of the stars of the film. In order here, let's see here, left to right. Let's introduce here Stimson, Snead, and Sam Dunning. Stimson directed and wrote the short film Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox. And Sam Dunning stars as himself in multiple iterations, which is kind of an amazing feat. And everybody really should watch it. Even it's a great film, but also just for the technical achievement of that is pretty amazing. Bottom right, we have Slav Nikitin from all the way from Auckland, New Zealand, where it's tomorrow. So that's exciting. And he is actually a feature filmmaker, and he has the film The Peacemakers, which will be showing also this year. Also quite an achievement to make a full-length feature. So we'll definitely be talking to him a lot about that and how that process went. And then on the lower right, we have Dave Penner, who is the director of the comedy short Diviner 3000, also showing at the festival. And you're also the star of it. Is that correct, Dave?
No, actually not in it, but...
Oh, no. Okay. You look a little bit like the actor who's in it, actually. It's funny. Anyway, so yeah, I think we're ready to get started. So why don't I start with the short films? They're about 10 to 14 minutes each. And obviously they're comedy, but they're also science fiction. So let's start out with David Penner. Dave, you made a really funny film, and it was a very limited set. I'm just curious because you had a very small cast for this film. Was that influenced by the pandemic?
I think it was a little bit. I think for me, it's also about just kind of keeping resources light. For me, this was kind of a project that I jumped on because a lot of the stars aligned with it in terms of location and everything like that, and I kind of rolled with it.
I'm sorry, you're coming. I'm so sorry. You seem to be lagging a little bit for me. Are you guys seeing him clearly? It's breaking up a bit.
Pretty bad. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe check your internet connection. And yeah, you seems to be lagging. Let me come back to you, Dave. Why don't we work on that? Maybe Violet can help you off camera. But we'll come right back to you as soon as that's settled. Okay, so let's talk to Stimson and Sam. Again, a very limited set and a huge cast of one person, which is kind of amazing. I don't know, Stimson, if maybe you can talk a little bit about how you filmed this, the whole the complications of the story that you told. It was really kind of fascinating.
Well, with Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox, and have fun saying that 3 times fast, it's multiple iterations of the same man, because what he does is he keeps going back in time 1 to 2 minutes to kill himself over and over again until getting bored with that and just hanging out with himself. So by the time we get to the end of the film, we have 9 of Sam simultaneously interacting with, arguing with, shouting at, and killing each other by the time we get to the end of this film. And for the way we did that is we kind of did all the ways. Like, we started with the really most obvious one, and we go out of our way to make it the first one that we really see, which is the standard split down the middle. Sam is talking to himself with someone reading off camera, that we're getting the timing just right. But then we start layering more complicated ones on top of that. So then we have rotoscoping shots. We eventually bring in body doubles, so Sam is physically interacting with himself. So until by the time we get to the end, we're doing combinations of all 3.
Oh, wow. I had no idea you were doing rotoscoping and the body doubles. Were those the ones from behind, or did you actually somehow rotoscope him onto other body doubles?
No, it's anytime Sam touches himself.
Uh-huh. Wow.
I could have worded that better. It's anytime physically interacting. I mean, you see him slapping himself on the back. Anytime you can't see a Tim's face, but we're shooting over their shoulder, we're doing that with a physical actor there in the scene.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when he physically falls on top of his own corpse, at which point we need that to be a different actor that he's physically acted with.
Mm-hmm.
And on one very specific shot, when he's dragging a corpse out of the room across the world's most disgusting floor, that was me.
Oh,
Face down.
That was nice of you to take that hit.
It was disgusting. We had wrapped the body doubles too early, but I want to turn this over to Sam because he's the one who had to physically do it.
Yeah. Where would you like me to start with that?
Yeah, it's amazing. So how did you must have like blocked it out a lot, and I mean, how do you even rehearse that? How do you block it out? How do you sort of
slowly
keep everything straight? The eye lines, everything.
Yeah, it was, I mean, even while we were doing it, and even with all the prep we had, there were still multiple times, I'm a filmmaker as well, and there were multiple times where I couldn't even wrap my head around what was exactly going on. I was just like, Stimson knows, so I'm just going to trust what he's just going to point in the direction he's pointing me and say the lines there. And hopefully I will be there as well when this comes through in the end. When I was learning it's funny actually, when I was learning the dialogue, it was basically, I was just reading the script over and over and over again and reciting it to myself in the shower for like 2-3 months. And what I didn't think about until I think it was like the day before, might have been the day before we started shooting, and I saw the set, and I just had this moment of, oh God, I have this memorized as like one running piece, and I'm not thinking about the fact that I'm going to be saying the lines of one of me over here while the other me is saying the other lines, and so I had to wrap my head around that on top of everything. And I mean, proof's in the pudding. It ended up working, and it was kind of at a certain point, I was doing so much, trying to wrap my head around it so much, shot to shot to shot to shot, that I couldn't think about my performance anymore. And it just became like, whatever's coming out, if it's working for Stimson, it's working for me.
And it kind of works within the insanity of the piece, because you are kind of going a little bit crazy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Within it. So, and it is really remarkable, I think, on both your parts, because it is so seamless, and you really do seem like you're perfectly interacting with your other selves. It doesn't feel off in any way. It really feels like you're all there. So, I mean, I don't know. Everybody has to see this film, because it is just, and especially if you're a filmmaker, I think really definitely see this, this one.
What's a really surreal experience for me is when I watch it, I don't actually see myself in all of them on screen. When there's multiples of me on screen, it's whoever talking is me, and whoever is not talking or is not the lead of the scene, I just look at as like another person. And then it's just weird every time I watch it. I'm like, oh, that's right. It's me. I did all of this stuff, but when I'm watching it, I can't. It's a very surreal experience.
Yeah, it must have been amazing to put it all together when you finally saw it all together.
Oh, I was shocked. Yeah, I was shocked at how well it came together.
Yeah.
The thing that kind of blew my mind, and this was the first day of rehearsal, which was only one day before we filmed it. Sam got into town a couple days we filmed. He and I had read it online a couple times, but it was the day before filming, basically, that we actually had a rehearsal. He's not kidding about how much he separated out the different performances and the different variations of Tim. I went into this fully expecting to have to feed him lines constantly, but when we go into, and all the Tims have different Roman names, so it's Alpha, Beta Tim, Omega Tim, Epsilon Tim, and they're all, you could actually track based on his performance which one is which scene to scene. We don't expect anyone to do that, but that was something Sam had worked out internally very carefully. And even if no one else ever picks up on it, to me, the watching of it, I could tell, yep, that's Epsilon, that's Epsilon, that's Epsilon.
Wow. That's good. That's great preparation. Which Tim was the one with the big hat who was very drunk? Which iteration of Tim was that?
Beta.
God.
That was Beta. Oh,
glad you remember. I just remember them based on like the mood that I was in with each one at a certain point.
Yeah, you all were going good. I mean, and the way it escalates as he starts, because it starts out, you have no idea what's happening. Then it just like, he just keeps killing himself, which is just amazing. Go ahead.
I was going to say regarding those split screen shots, what I look at it is I'm always looking at the ones who aren't speaking, because it was a very fun set to film on. But as anyone who's seen it knows, Sam's speeches are in some cases multiple page long speeches where he will just monologue uninterrupted to other Tims occasionally chiming in words. And we realized when we got to these shots where you have like 9 or 8 or 7, just how much it would suck the energy out of the room when it had to be just Sam reacting. Because we would have 3 straight minutes of the script supervisor reading the speech, and here's just Sam.
That's true.
Just listening for minutes on end. It's like, all right, we got it. Move up, move 1 seat over, sit back down, listen to the speech again.
Amazing. Yep. It might have been easier to build a time machine. And
we almost said the paint was drying the night before we filmed.
Wow. Where was that space? The dirtiest floor?
It was a massive warehouse out in Spokane that we filmed with, where we got to work with this phenomenal set designer who it kind of got out of control really fast. Like in the original script, the time machine is basically described as a box with a door on either side of it. Like slightly more advanced than the time machine thing in the movie Primer, if you've seen that. Until the set designer gave me a few sketches, and he had sort of apologetically squeezed into the corner this little triangle design, which was like, oh, well, shit, we got to do that. So what was originally meant to be 2 doors on a box turned into a 24.5-foot tall monstrosity of internal LED lightings, giant foam clamps painted to look like steel stuff. It was the first time I walked on set before they'd even painted it, but when most of the build was done, I literally had a moment of just walking. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like,
this could actually work.
Like I'm directing the thing, and I did not fully prepare myself for the scale of this thing when I saw it.
I had the same reaction when I first, got to the space, because you wanted to show it to me the day before, and I had the exact same, like, oh dear God, this is what we're doing. So I got. Thank God I prepped, or else.
That's great. And you really, you were saying, Stimson, that Sam had these very long speeches, and they were full of this technical mumbo jumbo that sounded really good. How did you write that? How did you think of that?
Drunkenly. So the origin story of Tim Travers, because I know a lot of actual physicists with MIT. My previous film I did before this, which was actually at Boston SciFi, was about the Mars Spirit rover that we actually did with Steve Squires. I'm an armchair scientist fanboy. And I had watched a bunch of time travel films, and I noticed that they were really focused on deep character growth and the human experience, and I really hated that, and wanted instead to do a film about the most narcissistically mean-spirited but actually good scientist I could think of. I mean, the whole thing with Tim Travers is every time something happens in it, he always actually takes the scientist's response to it consistently, even though he is an awful human being. And so I wrote the initial outline really, really drunk in Boston after having gotten drunk with several MIT friends, in which I was just kind of bouncing the ideas off of them. Sober, worked the script into something manageable, ran it by them, had them fine-tune it a little bit for me, but then otherwise came out. So all the theory in it, it needs to be stressed, is wrong. Its execution is wrong. However, the theory is based on real theory, being expressed in ways that are actually talked about by real scientists.
That's
minus
cool.
the part of how. We very delicately skip past the explanation of how.
That's very cool.
So.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed it a lot. Thanks so much for your great insights. We'll be coming back for sure and talking to people more about their films. I think, Dave, are you back and ready?
I think he was switching to his laptop.
Oh, he's switching. I'm so sorry, because it said yep and then cool, and then he's switching over. I'm so sorry about that. So let's go to Slav. Hi, Slav.
Hello.
So Slav, you did a full feature film, and that is a huge commitment, and it was executed beautifully.
It was a doozy.
Right, everything from, I mean, I can imagine how much work that was, and everything from the costumes to the sets to the lighting to the mood to the banter. It was really, really great to watch.
Thank you so
And
much.
again, an epic achievement. So tell me a little bit about where you filmed it, how you did the costuming, and because there are these masked figures, and also I want to know if the actors went insane with those things on. But they're these masked figures, and then they also have these like light up eyes and light up
LEDs.
computerized mouths that are just amazing, and it's just like this sci-fi noir comedy, and it's so much fun to watch, and it's so much fun to just listen to the philosophy that they're talking throughout, that's, you know, put into this really fun story. So tell me a little bit about its origins and, you know, where and how you filmed it. So
it was definitely a doozy to film, and I think I originally started with the idea of what's a low budget movie that I could go around to doing, and what I could do with the surroundings and the people that I knew in my current situation. And it ended up somehow being a sci-fi, because I think in some ways social commentary and social critique and stuff is important. But I definitely, it started with a long, it started under the influence as well, which seems to be the, I won't say exactly which drug or substance, but something was included. But it started with this idea that we've got, occasionally in humanity, we have people who come along who are completely not above, but in terms of so different in their worldview and so different in their understanding of the world that they almost seem alien, you know? They almost seem like they're part of a different species. Like Albert Einstein is, you're probably trying to communicate with him, you'd see some sort of disconnect, because he'd be so different in how he lived his life and how he focused his attention. But it came down to that idea that there's some sort of alien outside thing that is, in some ways, it was critiquing about how people would be so different that they're able to, maybe they're a scout for an alien civilization or something, you know? And it started with that little seed and then extrapolated to a certain way. And then the masks came in my dream when I was trying to think of what these aliens would look like, and everyone's got a concept of aliens, which is like a green thing, and it's got a little, you know, the cliche alien. But I wanted something different, and I thought bandages is something where you don't actually know what's underneath. Obviously, it's a humanoid figure, but you don't actually know what's underneath those bandages, and it's that mystery that is kept throughout the whole thing. And at no point do they take them off or anything. But it's the idea that it's just something I'm not sure or aware of.
And it almost feels like there's like energy underneath. And that was the visual effects and stuff, is that we needed some way for them to communicate. And like, obviously, if I had a budget, I would have been able to, I sort of wanted to do like neon emoticons and neon sort of outside. But I basically, there was about 600 plus visual effects shots, and I think we ended up having about 100 people jump on board and helping along, basically because they liked the project, and I tried to pitch it. I had to put on my producer hat, which is a horrible hat to wear. It's a really hard hat.
But I found people who were passionate and loving enough to jump on board and to only further their experience, but also further mine. And I think to me, every experience is a stepping stone for something else, and it's you need to try and learn as much as you can from whatever and enjoy the process along the way. And I think I'm sure the other directors and maybe probably even the actors, I mean we're all at this point, even Sam said that he's a director, so we all know that everything is a learning curve and everything's about progressing to something greater. And
well, I'm sure it says something great about you all too, that you were able to pull so many people together and that they believed in the project. And that's a really sign of a great director, producer, writer, someone who can inspire that kind of excitement in other people who, you know, have a smaller role and don't have all the creative control, but can really contribute. And I think that's really obvious in all of your films, in all the details and all the different aspects of the film that come together. Slav, I also really loved I think I'm really hung up on the costuming in your film, because it also, obviously it has a noir feeling, and I assume that was pretty intentional. And the costumes also reminded me of The Shadow, and obviously The Invisible Man. So it harkens back to this black and white noir world. And of course it does have the twist, and it does have a femme fatale in it. So can you tell me a little bit about how you interwove like 3 different genres? We've got sci-fi, noir, and comedy in one film.
So it makes me happy that you actually know that it's a sort of neo-noir, because I feel like, I mean, I thought a lot of people would miss that, or a lot of people would be so caught up in the rest of the genres and stuff. But it was just, I wanted to do, like, I've always been a fan of, like, Memento was probably one of my favorite movies of all time. And I just love that had a sort of femme fatale, and it had a twist on it, and it was a sort of, and I sort of just incorporated the idea that there's mystery, and you don't know who these guys actually are. You know, I just felt like it was an appropriate genre to mix into that, and yeah, just like the concept of mystery and keep, and the costumes were sort of the costumes were I like anything, everyone always wishes they have a bigger budget and to do better things. But at the time, it was just, that was the budget, that was the costume, that was something that was capable with the resources that I had at the time. So it was more about just trying to set up the best, in my world, in my view, what the best costume would be for those characters.
And then you find sometimes that those limitations actually lead to something really cool and innovative.
Yeah,
right? I'm assuming all of you have experienced that.
Yeah, constraints and restrictions also creates a lot of creativity, and it creates, I can't remember that there was I can't remember, there was someone's had a quote, the classic dog. I don't know if one of you guys remember, but there's a quote, something about like creativity is born in pressure or something. I'm sure you guys have heard it before somewhere.
Born out of necessity.
Yes, there you go, mate. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I think we've all experienced that, and What about you guys? Did you guys learn anything along your way, along your journey?
If I'm ever going to do split screen again, it's going to have no speeches.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, you must have, it looked like you did a lot of post-production work, obviously, Stimson, and a lot of the visual effects, right? I mean, there's a part where Sam actually gets like part of his head blown off, and it looks really good. How did you do that? Was that in like not Photoshop, but
I use this
3D program?
I use this incredibly advanced technique called hiring better filmmakers. Do it for me. Very difficult technique. It's hard to master. Tim Travers is actually 3 different sets of effects people. So one is Jason McKee of Mode FX out of Spokane. He is handling all of the really gore stuff. So when Sam's getting part of his head blown out, stuff like that, that's something Jason's doing. When Sam is blowing up from the inside out, that's also Jason's doing. And we're doing multiple. It actually took several variations to get one that we really liked before we could kind of figure out what blowing up Sam should look like. I had to fight for his eyeball inflating like a balloon on that last one.
That was great.
I'm fond of it too. And then for all the rotoscoping, so here's one Sam walking behind another Sam. That is with Jacqueline Chesson of To and Fro Productions. And then finally, for the most basic level, which is the split screening stuff, that I did myself.
Very cool.
And I didn't credit myself for that. So technically it's 3, but the 2 much better effects people did that.
Yeah, they were amazing. Yeah. And I saw your effects team was really cool too. I liked all the just even the way that the guns looked, and were the lights that were below the rim of the hats, were those actually on the actors?
So I'm happy that you even asked that, because because that means it's doing a good job. But it's actually practical. So I thought it would be good. Yeah. I think with any visual effects, it's always important to include practical along with the visual, because if you get carried away with the visual side, you sort of some people become detached and they don't see. But yeah, I think it was all practical, and I definitely lucky. The good thing about being the producer and the director for it is that every time someone sent through the visual effects shots, I'd be able to dissect it and have a look at how they did everything. And I was actually able to learn quite a bit in terms of visual effects, which I never originally wanted to be in or wanted to do, because I think movies shouldn't really focus on visual effects, and I think the story is the most important part. And I think the story and the characters are what drives the story. But I luckily got into the knowledge of having how they did everything and how they, and I especially interacted with a co-supervisor who basically was this, like, he's almost in a different planet. He's on the Albert Einstein level of like the stuff that he knows about visual effects and the programs is it's a whole different world, and it's people spend 30-40 years getting really good at it, and it's good to just pick up a little bit of things, and then like anything, it's good to know all fields, so then you can direct it a bit better, because you can sort of critique it more thoroughly. Like one thing I wish is probably Sam is aware of, as an actor, you know how to, you would probably know how to direct an actor better because you've experienced the acting yourself, right? And you know the circumstances and the conditions that you set people under.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I mean, I actually didn't start out in film as an actor. I actually started out, I went to film school, and so I was very much on that track, and then I ended up not doing anything with it and found my way back into filmmaking via acting, because I got an interest in acting, and then after a few years of that, I was like, not getting the roles I want, and I thought, like, oh wait, I know how to do this. I can just go make something.
Right. Yeah.
And then I immediately fell right back in love with directing and making, and just the process of making a film. And but at the same time, I still had all the interest in acting in it as well. So but yeah, I think that I still remember from film school, one of the only class, I'm very much on the track of somebody who has gone to film school and thinks that absolutely nobody needs to go to film school. You just need to go make a movie, and that will teach you everything you need to know. But one class that I do remember, and I remember really, really well, and it might have been where my interest started subconsciously with acting, is there was a class literally called Directing the Actor, and it was essentially acting classes. And so they just had this whole, class of aspiring directors just acting different scenes with each other. And the teacher would give an example of how to properly give direction. And basically it just made you very empathetic to the acting experience, and just how it has it's technical in certain ways, but it's also so kind of, trying to think of the right word, just kind of ambiguous and just like hard to really nail down, and it's very hard sometimes to translate
emotional
to the actor.
Emotional experience.
Exactly.
That's great to see all that back and forth. And it sounds like you've all learned, like you're learning from the visual effects people and from the director and from the actors, and just how collaborative it is if you just stay aware of everyone around and really watch what's going on everywhere around you.
Speaking about collaborative, should we bring in Dave?
Yes, exactly. That was my next thing. Now that we have, I know. I'm so sorry. That was my next thing.
Excited to be here.
Dave, we have you in full resolution now. I'm so happy. And I actually love segueing to you now, because you took a very different tact towards yours. Yours is pretty low tech. It's not a lot of visual effects. There's a great set piece of the actual diviner machine, which I love. And it's a period piece, which I also love. The 70s is probably one of my favorite periods aesthetically. I just find it to be so much fun. So will you tell us a little bit about how you came up with it, why you decided to make it a period piece, and sort of what were the challenges and fun things about filming it?
Yeah, definitely. I really loved. Well, I was gonna say, first of all, thank you for putting up with my ridiculous beard that I have right now. I'm just kind of going with the lumberjack aesthetic, but it was really fun. I was gonna say to your question a little earlier that I think sometimes when you're watching things, I mean, I think, keeping it primarily with just two people, I think that, sometimes obviously like some of it's for budget reasons, right? You want to keep things tight, but also, I think also some of the best, most interesting scenes sometimes are just two people talking in a room. So I kind of took that as a challenge to try to make something interesting. But yeah, like you said, it's almost like for Diviner, it's almost like the sci-fi element doesn't come in until the very end, where you kind of realize that it's sci-fi. So that was kind of challenging too, just kind of keeping up. I guess kind of setting expectations for the audience as one thing, and then trying to kind of shift it into something else. But yeah, it was funny what you guys were just talking about. What you guys were just mentioning before, how sometimes you have a challenge, but it can turn into something great. That kind of is what it was with the 70s aesthetic. Is I had this idea of this theme that I wanted to do, and this loose concept, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get to this short, at some point. But then I had a buddy of mine that just bought a house, and it was like just pristine, untouched since like 1968 when they remodeled it. And they had just passed away, but it was like they had never had kids or anything. All the furniture was this great aesthetic. They were like, hey, if you want to, we're gonna redo the whole house, but if you want to come in and shoot something, go for it. So I just kind of jumped into it and made 30 calls to figure it out. But yeah, so I was I feel like that challenge of being like, oh shoot, well, I got to take advantage of this awesome location. How do I do this? In some ways gave the short a little bit more life to it. I feel like, making it into a period piece and making it, in the 70s, and then being like, hey, I can have this diviner prop, maybe it's kind of like this analog-y thing. You can get good jokes out of that, but then it also like will, temper expectations to be one thing, and then it, makes it more of a, of a change when it does shift at the end.
Yeah, I loved so to explain just a little bit about the film, there's a traveling salesman, a door-to-door salesman in it, which I also love. That I don't know if the 70s inspired that part of it, because of course that's believable in the 70s that someone would be annoyed that yet another salesman's at their door. I loved that. And then he has this appliance that he's selling, and it is super analog and super sort of, old-timey sci-fi, something's going on. How did you design that? Who designed that? Where did you get the parts?
Yeah, I had, I sort of did like a little sketch of what I thought maybe it could have, that it has this, weird, this disc at the top, the satellite dish sort of thing, and those things. And I asked a buddy of mine that is actually a huge, he's really big in the cosplay community. He's on Instagram as the Brothers Yi, but he does a lot of stuff sometimes with Marvel and things like that. But he makes these amazing, with 3D printers, makes these amazing cosplay, robots or whatever it is. And so he's just so great with those kind of things. I was just like, hey man, do you want to come in and kind of help me design this thing, and we can kind of build it together. And so I was really lucky to have him, and yeah, just went from there. He designed the whole thing in like a 3D program.
And I think that the two main characters play off really, really funnily with each other. And I also love the alternate version. So again, another alternate version of a person who comes in at the end, and how different he is. And it's just such a great surprise. It's a really, really fun film. And I also really appreciate so much that you were able to do a believable sci-fi twist film without having to do a lot of effects. I thought that was like super, super cool. So you've made other short films. Are you interested in doing a feature? Have you done a feature, Dave?
No, I haven't. I'm writing one right now. That's also a comedy, but yeah, my other film that's been in festivals is kind of funny. It's also a period piece, but it's kind of more of a thriller drama. about these girls in the Nazi occupied Holland.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fun
Wow.
going into doing Diviner right after that, because they were just such incredibly different films.
Yeah.
But I got to, kind of flex different muscles a little bit and just kind of have a little, that one dealt with just such intense subject matter that Diviner was, a lot more loose and fun. There was a little more, improvisation from the actors.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. That is really different. So what point are you at with writing your feature, and how have you found writing a feature compared to the shorts? And is it daunting? Because you're probably thinking as a filmmaker, oh, I got to actually film all this. So you're trying to think about how to do it so that you can do it realistically, but also not limit yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely, the next level. And, but I think, it's kind of keeping the same things in mind. I feel like, always keeping budget in the back of your head, and, kind of what, if people that are good for different roles, and kind of just treating almost each segment of the feature as almost like a short or an arc unto itself. That's kind of how I'm approaching it. But yeah, really just keeping in mind, I think, those themes, and, this one is like a comedy. So really, like Diviner, just kind of, having fun and having kind of that, trying to have that camaraderie with the other actors. I think, a lot of these guys come from like sketch comedy, improvisational background. So it's like trying to, for me, it's like kind of, from a director's standpoint, is trying to juggle the improvisational aspects, which are great, but at the same time, you don't want them to, run out of hand, but also keeping the structure of things and, trying to find like a healthy balance.
Yeah. Improvisers don't necessarily like to learn their lines.
Yeah. And unfortunately for them, me as a director, I also wrote it. So I'm also like, I want you to say my lines that I wrote.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely, at the same time, you can be experimental, and sometimes you get good takes from trying it differently too. So. Yeah.
I always like that idea that a lot of directors will have them shoot it the way it's written and then say, okay, just do what you want in this take as the last take. It's kind of fun. That's kind of a good way to maybe get something different out of them. So you're in the middle of writing your first feature. What happened? Like, how do you then plan when you're writing it? You finish writing it. What are your next steps? We'll start with Dave, but I'd love to kind of hear from everybody about just how you go about doing what you do.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's as these guys would know, it's hard to get a feature off the ground and figure out the funding for it and development and all that kind of stuff. So I think, I haven't directed a feature yet, so I don't have all the experience, but, I think that it's, each project usually comes about differently, I feel like, and sometimes, it's kind of, what you tend to be good at is how maybe you can approach it, or how you, obviously who you have connections with, start there. And you never know. I think, you never know who knows who and who's going to be inspired by your specific project that you're working on. That's what I've found too, is that, if you kind of get other people excited about it and include them on your project, you might get, find ways to cut the budget down. You might get an awesome location. You might get, someone that's, a bigger name that's going to act in it that wouldn't normally, things like that. So I think that's, for me, that's probably one of the biggest ways to kind of generate excitement for that.
That's great. Anyone else? Wait for the siren to go. Okay.
Yes.
You re-clarify the question.
Well, just sort of, you write your script, and now you got to get your ducks in a row to actually start making it. So how do you go about that?
It depends if I'm going into something like a short or a feature. With a feature, because of just how much more money it costs, to me, it's not just having a script and the ability to film it. It's also getting some sort of distribution in place, because the degree to which I can recoup my investment tells me how much I can safely invest, or how much I can, in good honesty, go to someone else and say, please give me your money.
Yeah.
And that's an exhausting, nightmarish prospect that involves a whole lot of people and just trying to go out there and make the sales pitch. One of the reasons I love shorts is I don't have to wait for anyone. A short can be something where I've come up with a premise, I write it, and if it doesn't turn out to be garbage in the writing phase and I decide that I really want to film this, it's just a matter of doing it. And if, just like what Dave was saying, if you are excited for a project, people will come involved and want to be excited. In the case of Tim Travers, I had known some folks up in Spokane, a production house that I hadn't yet worked with, but I really wanted to. It was barely 2 phone calls to get them on board. I had met Sam about a month previously at a film festival where he and I had both been on the same panel. And I had really, really liked him in that. I just liked hanging out with him, but I had also really liked his performance in the film he had done. So right after talking to the studio, I immediately called up Sam. But that's one of the joys of shorts, and it's one of the reasons that I will always push back hard against the arguments that shorts are a waste of time, because it's something where you get to go out, you get to be experimental, you can do it the way you want to do it, as opposed to being locked in, like, Slav, I'm sure you're dealing with this right now with your feature, but it can be years of just bloody paperwork on features, and it's a nightmare, whereas shorts let you go out and be creative. And I'll stop talking because I saw Sam wanted to say something.
No, Slav, get in there. I see your mic.
Yeah, it's something before. Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of paperwork, and trying to go through the distributor process is a nightmare. And you have to put on, again, a marketing hat, and you have to put on your executive hat, where you're sort of just trying to be a salesman and you're just trying to get a product out there, and you have to think that way. And it's and for anyone that's creative, I'm sure you guys know, it's painful to have to do that and have to go through those. Some people love it, but that's to me, I've never been fond of trying to force a product to someone, but obviously those are the necessities that you have to do. And but one thing that I have learned a great deal is that there are many different distributors, and there are many different even like in any field, there's so many different variations of things that you also learn things when you, like with the Peacemakers, I learned a lot about specific distributors do specific films, and I learned this whole process of how to go through. A lot of distributors want to fund films in the early stages in the production side of things, and it's almost about trying to start these relationships as early as possible. And one of the best things that the Peacemakers did for me was get me in touch with a studio that would be considerate of funding another feature film, and basically all I have to do is try and pitch them the script and the story, and that's, again, it's the stepping stone to get to that place, and to try and basically, as filmmakers, all you want to do is really just go out and shoot and film, and you sort of want to leave the other stuff to other people, but whatever gives you the opportunity to film and to shoot anything, you want to jump on board. And sometimes it means selling your soul out, but sometimes it's all about the compromise that you have to make in terms of the business and the creative side of things.
Slav, were you working with people in New Zealand, or did you film in the US?
So it was actually an interesting process where I basically almost directed the same film twice. So I initially shot everything with costume actors in New Zealand. So we used local people who were willing to jump on board and get productive and try and do some stuff. And then I got to the point where, so the people who are the voiceover, the dubbed, is actually international. So I was able to audition about 300 people because all the auditions were just online through a little, I just sent them to, gave them a little line, and I just told them to read it out, and then I could have a listen and see if they're the right fit, which gave me so much more opportunity because you've got this whole bigger pool to select, and and that means also you find a lot of people who are willing to do something with less budget because, I mean, less pay because, but it's important to pay your actors. I'm just want to clarify that. But it's also, as a producer, like when you put on the marketing hat, you want to try and find the cheapest, high quality artists to contribute to your film, right? Like that's the business side of things, and it's horrible for me to say that, but unfortunately, it's part of the shtick where you need to find the best talent for the lowest price. And luckily, with voice actors, so everything, bringing back to the improv and stuff, a lot of the voice lines and stuff in there was actually improv because the costume actors were saying one thing, but when we got to post, we thought, oh, that line doesn't really work or the timing isn't right. So we just got them to improv some random things. And as long as they fit within, because they got a mask and they have no mouth movements, you basically just put in whatever you want in there. And it gave a lot of creativity. But
see, there you go. There, that was the costume we came up with. And it gave you so much freedom at the end of the film to change things that would have been really hard to change otherwise. Yeah. That's really cool. So you shot it in New Zealand, but then the voice actors were international. That's really cool.
Yeah. One of them was actually Erica was actually in Auckland somehow. I don't know how I found her, but she was in Auckland and she was perfect for the role of the female character, the Lady J. But luckily, great. She was. The everyone who was on board in terms of their voice acting was amazing, and one guy was from New York, Aaron. It was, But Sam, you had something to say, man. Come on, let's hear it.
Oh, it was. I was just. It was about the backup, the getting the ball rolling on features, and I'm actually in the development phase on my own first feature right now. And it was just interesting listening to everybody talk about that. And I think in my experience, one of the big things that I mean, I feel like it does get addressed a fair amount, but it's always the thing that I get caught up on the most is just finding your funding and the process about which because there's a variety of different ways you can go about that, but my short that I made that I met where I was taking about on festival circuit and met Stimson with, I funded that by a Kickstarter, and I was able to do that, and it was a ludicrous amount of work. It was basically working a second job just to make it happen, but we did it, and it was wonderfully gratifying. But that was raising at that time $26,000, whereas the feature I want to make is trying to raise six figures in some facet. And so I don't know if I'm really reaching a point with this, but I'm just back to learning experiences and whatnot. I'm kind of a babe in the woods when it comes to this, and thankfully I have a really great producer, and she's already made a feature, and so she's helping kind of guide my hand. But I guess I think that a big thing that I like to always bring up something that I always talk to other filmmakers about as soon as I meet another filmmaker, I'm always just like, how'd you get your funding? Yes. And it's never a thing like, who are your people? I'm emailing them. It's more just along the lines of I want to know what I want to, it's tough for me to think out of the box when it comes to this. So I just want to hear how everybody's different story of coming to that comes to fruition. Because I feel like with most filmmaking stories, in books of the making of blank, feature film, is always about the actual production and the gestation of the ideas and all of that. But it's very rarely about how did we get to this point where they were given this allotment of money and were able to actually chase their dream.
Yeah, and it's really, you don't want people to be going into debt and maxing out every credit card to make their film. So I think that's a really important, it should probably be an entire panel just on how to get funding. I would love to just talk about that for a little bit, so especially for the filmmakers out there, just sort of what are the different ways to get funding? What has worked for you? What would you recommend for someone who maybe is making their first short or their first feature? And anyone can take this.
And one other thing I would just add on to that is just I think that it's really important to address that with especially a lot of new filmmakers, just because that level of transparency, you look at somebody who's made a feature and it just feels automatically they're in this they're in this higher tier. It's just like, well, how in the hell do I ever get to this? And it's just having that transparency. It can make it like someone like me who's not, a filmmaker, but not the most experienced filmmaker. It just makes it go like, oh, this is attainable. This is something you can get to. And here's a variety of different ways that you can get there. Anyway, that's fine.
Stimson, I'm sorry. I was going to go to you, Stimson, because you mentioned that you got involved with a production company or a distributor with this early on.
Not for Tim Travers, for the feature I'm working on right now, which I legally can't talk about in detail. The question of where you get the money, and I think, one, yes, absolutely, there should be an entire panel devoted to this at every single festival out there, 110%. On the short side, I think part of it is always having realistic expectations. Shorts do not make money. One film out of every million made will possibly turn a profit, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with doing something for creative expression, but it does affect how you raise funds because you have to be honest about it. I think what Sam did he didn't name drop it, but the project that I saw him in is called Rick and Ruby, and if you can find it, it's awesome. But a Kickstarter is 100% appropriate for something like that because people know what they're getting into, and Sam got to make a really kick-ass little film out of it. With features, the good news is there's a variety of ways. On the very low end, I think people's best case scenario can be something like a pre-sale, where you're only getting a couple 100,000, but couple 100,000 is enough, depending on what you're shooting. And then, unfortunately, one of the things that I'm getting on my own little soapbox for a second, but one of the ways in which the nature of distribution has changed with streaming is it has had a kind of a choking effect on the indie scene because now everything is being developed in-house. There is far fewer avenues by which a person can make a film and put it onto a platform and make profit for it, because in the past you could take it to a theater and, roll your dice, maybe that film's going to be popular. Whereas now, for a lot of indie folks, the best case scenario is selling it for a preset amount of money, which may be significantly less than what you spent to make it, to get it on Amazon or Netflix or something like that as an SVOD. And I don't think that issue and the effect it's having on the indie scene and our ability to raise money is being discussed nearly enough.
That's interesting. And the festival thing, that Sundance and people buying something at a festival, is that just happening less?
I don't think it's happening less, but it's becoming more and more kind of the only source for folks who don't already have some sort of distribution in place. And that's a gamble. That's more than the I'm an adventurous filmmaker gamble. That's I'm going to bungee jump without a bungee and see what happens gamble. And I do feel like those of us on the indie scene should have the reasonable expectation of this being our job and not our hobby.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that is an unreasonable expectation we should have of our careers. So,
Absolutely.
But I think it's happening more, but there's just fewer alternatives.
So how would, I'm so sorry. So how would you go about, say, you've got your idea, your pitch, how would you go to a production company? How would you make contact with somebody who you can potentially pre-sell it to, or who you can get a distribution deal with?
Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer to that question. A lot of it for me has been massaging the right egos over the better part of the last several years, to coming up on 6-7 years that I've been aggressively pushing on a few bigger projects. But it really is the go to less to film festivals, more to marketing venues. AFM is the one that everyone talks about, even though, well, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. AFM. There are ways to do it, but that really is getting into the whole networking, building those contacts. Now, the good news is a lot of film summits and film festivals do let people come in and pitch. And a lot of the folks who are listening to those pitches are producers and small distributors, and folks, sales agents are a particularly good place to start. So there are ways to do it, but hope you're not in a hurry.
Yeah. Well, I hope that we can. Does anyone else have anything to add to that last question about funding?
Sorry, I'll try being quick about it as well. But I think it's important to, especially new filmmakers and anyone who's listening, I think it's really important to to just get busy and just start doing things and just get involved and hands-on. And a lot of people worry about funding and like trying to go through this whole process of distributing and this whole shebang, but you should see everything as a stepping stone, and everything is just to learn and to help you gain basically more people that around you who are similar and like-minded, and the more effort you can put into that and into, especially it's any passion and it's any creative love that you have for something, is you're going to get, the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out. And I think it's important to, I was always, a lot of filmmakers around me who I've talked to, and especially myself as well, I feel like I'm always restricting myself because I always try, and obviously you want a big budget because you want the quality and you want all this things, but you need to just get busy and keep doing under your, like, if you can shoot a feature film for $100, it's possible nowadays, but you should just get into it and just do it. And it's and honestly, it helps you to find contacts and find people who are willing to then fund you, because if you show distributors that you're passionate and you have some talent behind you, then they'll jump on board with the money, because that's what they're looking for. They see you as their own stepping stone, you know. And it's that business relationship that is important.
And do you feel like, because now you all have things that you can show with these short films, I assume that's one of the benefits of having done these short films, is you do have a reel. You do have, like, look, I have produced things. They've been in festivals, and you can look at what I've done. I assume that's a really important thing. Yes. I mean, everyone's just not.
It was like, who was going to talk?
Yes. Yes.
All right. So that goes out to all the filmmakers. Just make something, right?
It's a calling
Yeah.
card. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
One thing I would want to tag on the end of what Slav was saying, because he could not be more right about getting out there and doing it, especially with shorts, because of no matter what, you're kind of losing something going in financially. Don't give yourself just a creative goal. Give yourself a technical one. Every single short you do, if you're going to go to the trouble to raise the money and film this, what is something I don't know how to do right now that I can teach myself with this? Just on every project, give yourself, doesn't need to be big, but just something you haven't done before.
That's great. You guys have been amazing. Any last thoughts before we sign off?
Tagging along to that as well, is I think films and short films and feature films as well, is the market's become so saturated where you need to do something that no one else has done before. You need to push things, you need to push limits, you need to push yourself beyond any healthy way to get to a point where you need to stand out from the rest of the stuff, because there's just so much stuff out there, and unfortunately it means that people are working for free and people are working as a hobby as opposed to professionally. But because the market's gone that way, like, say for like example Twitch, right, there's so many people who are invested into streaming and online streaming and stuff, but you need to do things constantly to push yourself further than anyone else has done before. And it's with any creative endeavor, is you have to push yourself beyond any, and it's a scary road to go down, but you learn a lot, and it's really important in terms of, it keeps you sane, but through an insane way, you know. It's well,
it looks like we actually have a couple minutes left, so just since this is a panel on comedy and sci-fi, and we've actually gone through a lot more of just the making.
The joke's on the audience.
They are all comedies, and they're all
you made a
funny.
mistake.
Comedians are the
Wrong
saddest people
place.
ever. So.
But I would love to just sort of ask you guys, because there are a lot of great sci-fi comedies out there, ranging from just pure parody like Spaceballs to just pure sci-fi like you guys may have made that are comedies. So what are some of the ones that you have loved?
I'll throw out Galaxy Quest right away, I think, and I know Stimson will support me in the British television series Red Dwarf.
Yeah, Dwarf. Yep.
Yep, those come to mind immediately.
Two of my favorites. Those are great films. They were going to make a Galaxy Quest 2, And then Alan
I heard
McMahon
about
passed
that.
away. So that breaks
Yeah.
my heart on 2 levels. But that is a great film for anyone who hasn't seen it. You should definitely go see it. And Red Dwarf, also a great show, especially after season 2. Really
And still going incredibly.
It is?
They
I did not
did
know
a
that.
movie over the pandemic.
I did not
Yeah.
know that. Wow, that's
They
really
did a feature-length movie over the pandemic, and it's honestly the best thing since season 3.
Wow. Okay. Everyone
Yeah.
needs to check that out after I'll check out all this stuff at Boston Sci-Fi.
I'll,
Anyone else? Dave?
I'll throw out a weird one that inspired me when I was younger. Mystery Men from '99.
Oh, yeah.
It's not overtly sci-fi, but it's got a lot of, it's kind of in the city that's a little bit has a sci-fi
Hell yeah.
feel, but it's very like over the top, super like colorful characters and
Yeah.
I think it's on Netflix right now.
Vincent D'Onofrio was amazing.
Yeah.
The way he inhabited that bug. Oh, so good. Yeah, there's so many really good ones. And yeah, I would say Galaxy Quest has got to probably be one of my very favorite movies, period. Yeah, I think that's it. Anything else?
One of the things I'll say for sci-fi comedy, sci-fi comedy, when it's hard sci-fi, is just normal comedy. You're just exploring something you want to explore. I mean, that's one of the joys about sci-fi. It's usually exploring an interesting idea. And most interesting ideas are pretty funny on some level. So it's not a big leap to go from sci-fi to sci-fi comedy.
Yeah, I mean, your films could all have been done as dramas. Absolutely.
I thought I was making one.
Yeah, I really screwed that up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my God, my dog is literally jumping up.
It's like sci-fi's and horror are also both kind of an expression of like imagination too. It's like kind of this intuition where you can think about, how can things be different? How, that's why it's so often about the future. And, I think it goes along with that. Inherently, it seems to be they seem to be philosophical in some way because it's thinking about something that could be but isn't.
Yeah. Yep. And I think some of the most fun films to make probably are horror films. It's probably more fun to make a horror film than to make a comedy film.
I wanted to add to Dave. Dave was going just in the direction I was thinking, and it's the thing I really love about sci-fi and horror and genre films in general is that I personally find that they are some of the most easily relatable on a human level because the genre aspect is kind of spectacle, but the actual heart of every genre media, whatever feature, short, whatever, is humanity. It's always coming down to that's what the one thing you can relate to, and that I think is one of the most why I gravitate towards genre more than anything else. And I'd rather watch that than most any Oscar baity slice of life drama. Not to say that a Mike Leigh movie isn't amazing, but I would always be drawn more to this thing that's coming. It's almost giving you the audience this little. I'm trying to think of the right word. Almost a little bit of a barrier between the thing that it's exploring, the humane idea that it's human idea that it's exploring, and then the actual entertainment value. And I think it's just it's something I've been thinking about quite a bit, and why I just continue to come back to genre, wanting to act in it and wanting to write it and wanting to make it. Is just that it's, for me, the most human way to approach entertainment.
And it forces subtext.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
All right. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure for me. I'm so glad that I had the privilege of seeing your films before the festival. And I really hope that everybody specifically watches these films when you come to the festival. I want to remind everybody that the festival will happen between February 16th and February 21st. Tickets are available at bostonsci-fi.com. And this year, the festival will be both online and in person. And Sam and Stimson's will be in person and doing panels there, I assume, live, possibly, or networking.
You tell us.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Based off
this
panel,
panel,
maybe they'll be do more, but they will be in person at the festival. I assume talking about their film after it airs. And a lot of those films will be taking place in the Somerville Theater in Somerville, Massachusetts, which is a great old theater that everybody should go to, no matter what. They show a lot of great old films on 30 millimeter, and they're a huge supporter of the Sci-Fi Festival. And I also want to thank the producer Violet Acevedo for doing all the great behind the scenes work. And again, thank you to all my guests, Sam Dunning, Slav Nikitin, Dave Penner, and Stimson Snead. It's really, truly been a pleasure. And congratulations again to all of you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Toodaloo.
Good meeting you all.